Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soulful in the studio working on my vintage grunge journal. I want to say welcome to anyone who's brand new to my channel. You are starting at I think in episode 3 here of this current series. So down in the description, I will put a link to this entire playlist and any other things that I kind of reference. I usually put any kind of products that I am using, tools, that kind of thing. Any other videos, I'll try to put them down there also. Feel free to ask questions or leave comments. And then if you enjoy this video, give me a thumbs up, click on subscribe so that you don't miss out on any more. So if you are brand new or have been following along, I'm working on volume 2. This was volume 1 of my vintage grunge journal. And it became so full that I decided to do a volume 2 instead of making it like this. So I'm on, this one was done last year. So far, all I've done on the second one is make the cover. That was the first 2 videos. So we have that. So if you wanted to do one, you could catch up. Now, yours may not be the theme of mine. It could just be that yours is grungy, you know, vintage grungy, but mine happens to be the theme of a ghost town in California that I had visited and taken lots of photos of. I always wanted to do something with those photos. So this was what I came up with. Now, I want to mention something that's just kind of funny because I see that I'm in a couple of groups on Facebook kind of thing, and I see questions come up because a couple of them are like for beginners, which I'm still a beginner. So I like those kind of things. So I always try to approach mine from a beginner. And one of the questions that keeps coming up is, do you actually write in your journals? Do you actually use your journals, or do you give them away? What do you do with them? And the funny thing is, I totally relate to that because I've never been a person who writes in a journal ever. And part of it is I don't want to write it down. Somebody's going to read it later and after I'm gone or whatever, and it's really not for them, it's for me. So that's kind of why I like art journaling in a way where you write things in the background and then you cover them all up with paint. That's totally up my alley. But I found that I love making these journals. And for me, it's not about writing in them. There's lots of room to write in them in case I do want to give one away or sell it or whatever. But for me, the whole therapeutic part of it, the journaling part of it, is the process of making it, because I could give this to somebody and they might not get any of the things behind it, but everything that I do in here might have a memory. Or so instead of me writing down words, I'm just expressing myself or going through whatever by making the actual journal. So, you know, if you're brand new to this and you just don't like, why would I make this? It's because you love making it, and then it's a useful thing, whether it's something just pretty to pick up and look through. Mine are very detailed, I think, because that's just how I am. So it's just an expression of me not writing it out in words, but very much full of memories and that kind of thing. So I'm working on the first signature of this second volume. If you watched the first volume, I did each signature, there's only 3 in this one. Each signature represents a building, and it's kind of generic. I mean, obviously there were pictures I took of Bodie, but I didn't live back then. And, you know, I mean, that town went from like 1800s through like 1970. So it covered a big time span. And I'm kind of focusing on the older vintage things just because I like that too. So my first signature was a generic house. The second one, a church, a school, and now I'm working on the first of the second volume, which is a mercantile. So I wanted to kind of share, even though I'm very early into it and don't have a lot finished, I just wanted to share because, again, I try to gear these to beginners, and sometimes it's hard to get started and you're just stuck and you don't even know where to begin. And you might think that people that do this all the time just kind of, you know, they're fast and they know exactly what they're doing. I don't think that's ever going to be true for me. So I wanted to share how I approach it. And then that way, if you're doing one, even a different theme, it'll kind of maybe help you get started with yours and give you ideas of just different techniques that you can use. And if you don't have a lot of purchased materials, things that you can use around the house, or just that you can buy inexpensively and actually make a lot of it yourself. I'm kind of going along the same way that I did in the first volume. And because it's a ghost town and I looked through windows and doorways to see inside these buildings. I wanted my book to feel that way too. So I've used a lot of vellum. The outside of my first signature is kind of a title page. This photo was done also on vellum in color. Someone asked me recently if I also did vellum color printing or just the kind of sepia stuff, but I do it all in color. It's just that the other photos I've done were done in a vintage format, so that's why they look that way. So this one is in color. It's really kind of blurry, which is fine with me because it's supposed to be an old grungy ghost town. I took this photo from a billboard, and so, you know, when I took these, I took them with my phone. I wasn't knowing what I was going to do with them, so some of them, the quality is not very good. So I tried to up the quality as best I could, and then when I'm putting them in my kit, I put 4 on a page. And for the photos, I do 4, and then I've printed them out just so you can kind of see. I'm kind of doing my next kit as I go along. For the first volume, if you hadn't watched it, I did a kit that is just now on my Etsy shop. So this is up now. It's for the first volume, and I'll be doing one as I go on this second volume that'll, you know, be ready at the end. But as you can see, my photos, I did them on 4 to a page. I do them with a white background so that you can print them out on vellum and not have, you know, another background going on. The other thing that I had thought of, and I've also, if you haven't been watching me, I got a new printer. I'm still learning things. So I've been doing videos on printing on fabric. I've done a standalone. I'm going to be doing one on doing vellum and tissue paper, but I haven't done that as a standalone yet. But since I'm using them in my book, I'm always going to kind of cover that for you so that you can keep moving forward on yours too. So when I printed on vellum, my old printer, I don't know if it's because I didn't have all the full drivers downloaded. Sometimes when you install a new printer, you can just do a basic installation, and then it doesn't give you all the print setting options that you could have. So that might have been my problem. My new printer, I have done that, and I'm printing through the printer. It kind of, I don't know if you'd call it an app, I guess you would, that it downloaded onto my computer. I'm printing through that instead of through my Preview. I work on a Mac. So instead of printing through Preview like I used to do, I'm printing through my printer is an Epson ET8500. And so I'm printing through the Epson Plus. It gives me the option to print borderless and then also a thin paper setting. So what I was doing on my last volume was I was just setting my settings to plain paper because I didn't have a thin paper. And then I was setting it to to a high quality. Well, what that does is it puts a lot of ink on your paper and it makes it very wet. So when it comes out of the printer, it may come with some like little smeary lines, which depending on what you're doing may or may not matter to you. For this kind of thing, you don't really notice it because they're vintage and grungy anyway. But it's really kind of difficult to deal with this. When it comes out, it literally wants to curl like this because it's wet. So you have to just kind of hold it very carefully. You can see where it's smeared here, and get a heat gun or blow dryer real quick and just dry that. So the color comes out nice and bold for these vintage looking photos, but it's a lot of ink and it all gets kind of bleeding as it dries. So that's kind of what happens there. Now my new printer, I found that I had a thin paper setting. So I just put the thin paper through my back feeder, and it only prints a small amount of ink because it doesn't even let you control a higher quality. It only will let you print standard, which is then just less ink, but it comes out dry. This one did have a little bit of that skid mark, I'm gonna call it, but the reason I think is because I had done the other one, and there some of that ink may have been in my rollers, you know, as this paper fed through. So if you want to do the dark one, you know, by all means, go for it. But if you don't want that mess and to deal with that, but you want it darker than this, you can print it out on regular paper, and this is what they'll come out looking like. And I think this was just on a standard setting because, again, I'm printing out a photo to look vintage, so I don't need to spend the ink on doing a higher quality. And then you can just lay a piece of regular vellum over, and so you still get that kind of ghostly feel, but without, you know, using up a bunch of ink. So that is an option too. And when you get this kit, you'll get like I said, you'll get the 4 photos. You can print them on whatever you want. On this first page, it's going to be the 2 that I used for the mercantile, and then the 2 that I used for the hotel, which is going to be the next signature. So if you're curious about how I got my pictures to look this way, they are my own photos, so they are in color. I have an app that I pay for on my phone called Photo Lab, and you can actually do a lot of unique filters things onto your photos. And so there's one that will make your photo look antique. So I use that one. Now, one caveat, this plan is like not cheap. I keep wanting to get rid of it, but then I keep using it. So it's like $5 or $6 a month. But then they started this year, when I was first using it, it would just print out with no watermark on it. And then this year they came up with, now you have to pay $19.99 in addition per year, just $19.99 for the year, to be a VIP. Then you can print your photos without their watermark on it. Otherwise, it's going to say Photo Lab on here. So that wasn't very nice. I almost got rid of it, but I at least needed to keep it while I do this journal because I had not printed out all my pictures I needed. So I know, kind of off topic, but again, I like to share everything because, again, I'm new and I'm just sharing you everything I'm learning as I go. Okay, so my first part of that signature is going to be my cover sheet. I actually did this page in the last video. So for vellum, I like to reinforce my spine. So I have just put on a piece of my rusted fabric. I do have a rusted fabric paper pack, and there's also some rusted fabric in the freebie file. I will put a link down below because from time to time I will put free things in there that you can use. So there's, I think, 3 different of my rusted fabric prints, and then you can print them onto fabric and have your own grungy fabric. Or you can make your own grungy fabric. I think I have videos, or a video, where I have gone through that. Then the next page that I put in mine is just kind of a liner page, and that is just with baking parchment. Not a lot sticks to that, but I did in one of my videos recently, and I think it's in this series. It's in the one, I probably think in the second one, and it's different glues and adhesives, which ones work best on weird kind of papers like this. So if you look back at that, you'll see what kind of glues or tapes I use for different things. That's a handy one to watch because I do use kind of some different materials in this. So for my first signature, I knew I wanted the front of the store and the back of the store on the front and back of that kind of beginning of that signature. So I knew that part. From there, I didn't really know anything. I knew I'd be using some ledger papers, that kind of thing. I grabbed stuff that I had already coffee stained or tea stained that I could use. And actually, when I did the first volume, I had kind of pre-prepared some of those. So I kind of just went through what I had. The other thing I like to do is, if you kind of are getting a theme in mind, go through the paper packs you have and all the little embellishments and that kind of stuff, and just kind of start putting together a little collection of things that might work in your journal. So I kind of keep a little box. This had some from Tim Holtz, had some different vellum wallpaper, since I've been using some vellum in here, some just different things that might work. I recycle blue jeans for a lot of things, and I had kept this. This was the inside of a pocket of an old pair, and I just like that. And I thought, this is a mining town. I'm sure they wore Levi's. And then just some other little Tim Holtz things that I had that, are kind of like labels, things that I might find in a mercantile. So I kind of just go do that first, kind of collect anything I might want to use. And then it's a place that I can put my little scraps as I go. So I've got that kind of ready. Again, have some little fabric pulled out, maybe some, vintage lace or different things that you might want to use. I also knew that I would want some wood grain in this one because the buildings are all kind of a really old sunburnt wood. And I had very early on in the first volume, and I don't know if they're in the freebie file or not, but I'll have to look. I took a bunch of pictures of old barnwood to use, and I don't have a kit yet of this, but I'm going to be making a kit of background textures, old wood, coffee grain sacks, French seed sacks, all that kind of stuff, just for some different background textures in case that you don't want to do all that and dig up and find all those things. I'm giving you the idea if you have access to all that, and if not, I'm going to be doing a kit so that you can just download that and print your things at home. So I may be using this is just some old barnwood that I had done. And then I also have a Vagabond 2 and the Tim Holtz 3D wood grain 3D folder that gives you this, you know, textured wood. So I've used this a couple places. It's going to be in the kit, and I'll probably add that in also to whatever textural thing that I do. So I knew that I wanted to use some of that. So I've kind of been just pulling together things like that and then getting my pictures printed. So my first, like I said, my first photo page is going to be the Mercantile and the hotel. And then I want to do some mining ones, and like a saloon, the saloon might be part of the hotel, that kind of thing. I'm kind of, you know, still thinking about it as I go. So my photo for the photos that I had taken for the Mercantile, I was kind of limited. On my first volume, I started with that front door, and I really liked, you know, starting the book that way, where you could actually open it, because I had a really pretty good face-on photo of a front door of a house. So I was able to blow that up and do that. I didn't have that with a Mercantile. You know, when I took these pictures, I wasn't even doing this journaling at that time. So I was just taking pictures. So it's very shaded there, you know, and I wasn't going to be able to get really a door you could open. And if I did, you wouldn't even notice that this was, you know, a store. So I kind of really rather had the storefront windows on that, you know, too. So I went ahead, and this building was actually longer. There's another part to it, and I have that photo somewhere, but I don't know that I'm going to use it in this. I had thought about, I cut it in half, because this rest was the owners of this store also owned like the stables, and I don't know if that was part of it or if it was a warehouse, and then there were stables in the back. But I ended up, because I wanted to kind of focus on the storefront window for the front, I cut that picture in half, so the building is actually bigger. But then for the back of it, I really kind of like the idea that it had this gas pump and a truck here. So this is the part of the building that I cut off of my other photo, and then because I kind of want to see that. So I'm thinking that's going to probably go on the back. So those will be the two that I put in the kit. And then I knew, you know, that I wanted that whole ghostly effect. And since I wasn't going to be able to cut in a door, I still wanted that kind of look. And my vellum pictures are the ones with the thin paper setting, so they're kind of more faded. So I thought, well, I might just layer these on top of each other. And then, you know, maybe this one's a pocket, or maybe it's two pockets. I haven't decided yet. I did think that I do want to put it on a piece of the wood. And this is the wood backing that I made. And I've just used Distress inks from my, you know, like these pads, to just put layers of different colors on to make that wood look that old sunburnt kind of look. And then I did around my corners. So I kind of just start prepping things to get ready, you know, not knowing what I'm going to do with it really. So I've got that together. And then for my first, I've, you know, printed those out for the back. Have no idea what I'm going to do with those either. Oh, one thing I should mention while I'm on these photos. So as I mentioned, these were color, and I ran them through an app on my phone to get them to look like a vintage photo. But then I like to take another step. To me, everything's, you know, nice, but kind of a flat one-dimensional. The more layers you add to something, the more things you do to it on a page, then the more interesting and artful it looks to me. So I've done this in other videos. I'm not going to actually demonstrate it now because it's just really easy to explain. I took the photo. This one was just like this. This is just done on like 28-pound copy paper. And then I take Mod Podge and a brush and just Mod Podge over this. While it's still wet, take a piece of your scrim. If you don't have scrim, it's just a really gauzy fabric. So cheesecloth would work. Any kind of gauzy thing that you have that shows that kind of woven texture. Just lay that down while it's wet. Go over it with a brayer. I have one that I use just for gluey things, just to get that, or just even your hands or a credit card, just to get that imprint. And then while it's wet, just pull it right up. And then that way you get this, I don't know if you can see this, you get that kind of texture of a vintage photo in there. Now, someone else had mentioned this to me because I used this technique a long time ago in a video, and they were kind of sharing their idea about putting your vintage photo or those kind of stains into your Mod Podge to tint it. You can do that, but then to me, it's not really necessary in a way. I want to have more control over that. I don't want it over the entire photo. It's already a sepia color. So to me, I would rather have it look here and there. So I do it with Mod Podge, put the scrim over there, pull it off. And then once it's dry, then I take my vintage photo and I just go around the edges. So then it's not covering the whole thing. Get it where you want it. So that's just kind of a step up from this one. And it just makes it look more old and vintagey. And you can see it changed the texture of it a little bit too. So it just looks like a photo that's been handled a lot. So now I'll do that to the backside one too. So I've got my photos kind of thinking about, I'm not sure how I'm going to attach them. I want to do something interesting. In this one, I had done different things where I've sewn them on, or I kind of liked how I used eyelets to, just kind of put a little detail there. So I'm not sure, that's kind of where you start thinking about things. So for my actual folio, I'm going to call this the first one in that signature. I was kind of just, grabbing what do I have already. So I know because in my first video, or my first volume, I created these 2 paper packs that I'm going to be using in the second one. These are already available in my Etsy shop. There's a vintage wallpaper one, and then there's this fresco backgrounds. And so I had printed these out, for my demo, my video. And so I took just this first one, and I'm using that actual print that I did for this. In a lot of them, in my other volume, I used all my originals. But if you've watched this and you know how it goes, these were 2 book pages. So I had to either attach them, which I had done in my previous one, or I could use a printed out one, or they're smaller. So I'm actually using these same 2 sheets of my originals in this journal that you'll see here in a minute. But I just want to use up some of the paper I printed out. So I grabbed this one. I liked the colors of it. And it kind of reminds me, I had done this little technique on the border of just this one that was actually from a piece of lace. I did it with my jelly plate, and it gave it a look to me of like a tin ceiling. And this store in Bodie has a tin ceiling. So I kind of wanted that feel for the beginning. So this was the perfect piece of paper to use for that. And then I don't have a lot of blue ones, and I really like that this had a lot of blue in it because I am going to be using this photo that's really outdoor, the sky was blue in the actual photo, that kind of thing. So I decided that was the perfect one to use for my front and back. And then what I do is I just kind of started, paper clipping the things as I'm getting an idea so that I keep everything together. And that way I can kind of look at them, together as I start building on that. Okay. So that was my first one. Then I knew, one thing I did know for sure I wanted to do was on this inside first thing, I wanted a pocket. And I wanted it to have a mannequin because there's a mannequin in that first window. So I knew that was the first thing I wanted to see after the front of my store. For that, again, I decided I needed a mannequin. And there is a Tim Holtz cutout, and I don't know where it is. It's in I have another little bin from my first volume. There was a Tim Holtz, just a black and white cutout, kind of like the people things of a mannequin. And I was going to use that, but then I thought I have a mannequin. And so I really like making my own elements, because I knew I was going to have to make more in this book. Then that way they don't stand out like a sore thumb. You know what I mean? I'm kind of making a lot of things. So I took my mannequin and I took a photo of it, and then I'm learning Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator. And so I got rid of the background, changed the color of it a little to make it more sepia. And then I had a mercantile tab. And so I have that. That's going to be part of my kit. So I've started, this is what takes me so long, is, you know, I'm making my elements, but then I'm also trying to build a kit at the same time, and it's ever changing as I actually start using things. I knew I wanted my mannequin, and then I wanted it to be kind of layered on a pocket. So I had the little tab that could be a layer, and then I needed something for the base of the pocket. So I used some of my my wood grain. I had already, you know, printed out a few pieces, so I thought this was stuff that was kind of already started. So I just made a pocket out of that. And I'll probably put a gusset on this one since I've already kind of started building it. I want to probably use it in my book. I end up with lots and lots of practice prints and that kind of thing. So for the kit that you get, I've actually added the flap so you don't have to do the gussets. If you wanted to cut out just this rectangle, you can do that and not have it be a pocket. You know, it could be a journal card or something like that, and just cut those tabs off. I went ahead, and this may not be the final one because I may end up scanning my final one, you know, to be here. Because I've done the distressing and all that kind of thing. But my idea was to have a final pocket that you could just print out and slap on there if you want. But then also have the elements, because you might want to make a pocket, but you might want to put different things on it because this might not be your theme. And then you could maybe, you know, have them for other projects or whatever. Same with this, you know, you'd have it, and same with the mannequin. That way, if you want them to look more dimensional, like I did, you can cut each element out and stack them and make your own. You could even raise parts of it, you know, by putting a little piece of cardboard in between or whatever. So that was kind of my thinking. I'm not sure how I'm going to attach this. I went ahead and pierced little holes. They're really even. You can do this two ways. You can either sew it through your sewing machine without thread in your needle to get them evenly spaced. I wanted them a little further apart than my cheap machine will do. So I actually used my bookbinding thing, and I just put it in here. This is my We Are Memory Keepers bookbinding, and I just stuck this in here and just went through, and so that my holes would be nice and even. And I just pierced them with my little punchy tool, and then that way I can just hand sew that if I want, and then glue it down. I may even end up putting a row of those onto this tab and doing like a cross stitch. These are just different ideas that I come up with, but I don't do them right away until I'm sure what I want to do, you know? So that's just kind of how I work. So I did know I wanted some kind of border on here. It was just kind of plain looking to me still. So I thought, well, I'll take a piece of my rusted fabric that I've done, and I'll put that there because it kind of looks like the stuff that covers the mannequin. And then a piece of vintage lace just to add another little layer to it. So I think I'm going to like that. I've been doing slow stitching if you've been watching me, so I might end up actually hand stitching all this kind of stuff just for fun. So I think that's going to end up what my pocket looks like when it's finished. So I'm just attaching that. I don't have to put it all together yet. You know, this was just kind of one step at a time. And then I knew, because I had printed this just on white paper, I had to do something to this inside. And I already had grabbed ledger that I had made and coffee stained, and I don't want to be too redundant in the same signature. So I grabbed a piece of ledger from this paper pack that I just love. I'll put a link to this. This is a great one. It's got lots of pages. It's 180 sheets. It says printed cardstock, but it's really thin. It's probably maybe 28-pound copy paper weight, you know, if that. But I wouldn't consider it cardstock. It's just got all kinds of different vintagey things, and there's some text and ledger and that kind of stuff. So I had grabbed, it has some different graphs and lined papers. So I just grabbed one of those. I think it was actually that one. And then just distressed it. So to distress this, I went ahead and I folded it where it was going to need to be folded. That was the width of that paper pack. I did trim a little bit off the bottom, but I knew I had a pocket anyway, so it was going to go behind there. So to distress that one, I just took some Distress Antique Linen Spray Stain. I might have used a little bit of Vintage Photo too, but I almost think I just used that one. And I didn't spray it. I just, you know, opened the bottle and used the this little part, and just dropped droplets on here. Let them kind of start to spread. You can add some droplets of water and let that kind of spread. And then I even put a little bit of instant coffee, just sprinkled some little granules, and let that all kind of start dissolving. And then if you use a heat gun and kind of dry it before you add more layers, you'll get those little outlines of the spots, the little water stains, instead of letting it all just kind of bleed together. So I would dry some, and then I would spray more water just to get, I wanted the white to get really toned down. So it's mostly covered, but I still wanted to see those little droplets. So you kind of just do that in layers too, and drying it in between. So I just did that one piece of paper. And then this was just a piece, I don't know what I'll do with it, but I just kind of liked how it looked in there, because again, I like that look of seeing through different things. And I liked the color of it with my mannequin. So I just kind of start, layering without, committing to anything until I kind of get the whole thing going. So my next signature my next little folio that I wanted to do, this actually was a piece that I grabbed, I think even before I grabbed this one. And I know it's redundant, but I don't think you'll notice it so much once I get it all covered up. So it's actually this piece of paper. This is my original that I painted. And then the other one, this was my original, which this one was done on book page. So again, I could have used just this one, but it was white, and so I wanted to cover that. So I think I'm going to do these two together, and I think I'm going to make this a pocket in between. So I like to have lots of different places to tuck things, so I think that is going to work out that way. And then I'll kind of just float it in there, and I really like those colors together. So that was going to be my next one, and I think that whole idea came later. So then my next one was just to grab some. These I had already actually previously, when I did the first volume, I had already made some extra ledger paper. This is a green one. This is just some school construction paper, or manila paper. Remember that manila paper they had you draw on? That's all that is. If you go to, if you're new to this and you just like, where do I find materials? I just don't have a lot of stuff, and I don't have a lot of money to spend on it. Go to the school section in your office supply place. You can get in like the accounting section, you can find different ledger papers. These are two different colors. And then in the school section, you can get these manila paper, the wide ruled paper for like elementary school learning how to write for the first time paper, and then you can get college ruled paper. What do they call those? Essay books, those kind of things, for just different sizes of different kinds of paper, and then just tea stain them, coffee stain them, whatever. So I had this piece, and this one I had already cut, and you don't have to worry about them being, the entire width and height. I kind of like all the pages staggered. So I thought, well, that can be my next one. And then I had this manila one. Let me pull some of these things out that I've already kind of figured out. So this one, I just folded it up instead of cutting it, and then for a little pocket, and then folded it in half this way. So I kind of had those pieces, with no decorative anything. And then I had this different color one. Now I'm going to end up losing what I was doing. So I kind of had that kind of going when I started. And then I just start, I need to now kind of go to my theme in my mind and figure out, how am I going to incorporate this to make it a cohesive signature. So I like these little Tim Holtz people. I used a couple of those in my first one, so I wanted to use a couple in this one too. And so I found her, and I thought, well, she could either be someone that works at the store, or she's a woman shopping at the store, or maybe she's a local seamstress, or, I don't know. So I thought she looked really cute hanging over that one. And then I don't know where this will get used. I think on the inside. So I had her, and then I was trying to figure out, okay, she looks like she's sitting, so I need her to be leaning on something. So I found this. This is like a little case for spools and thread and that kind of thing. So I just took just the front of that And this was just me playing around. This is just on cheapest paper because I kind of think this is going to end up as a pocket too in my kit. So I have to scale it still to size and all that, but I'm thinking that kind of looks cute if she looks like she's kind of sitting on this little spool thing. So that's going to become an element. So whenever I find things, I have a lot of vintage things that I take photographs of and then, you know, do my little thing with the Photoshop and all that to turn them into little elements that I can use. And then those will go in my kit when I have them. And the other thing that I thought of, I have a lot of vintage stuff, but if you don't have a lot of vintage things, go to an antique store and just take pictures, you know, if they let you. And I don't, you know, if you're nice or if you ask, they might not care. And you may be able to find them online too that you could use that are, you know, not like someone else's, you know, copyright free or whatever. But I like taking photographs of the stuff I have or things like that that I see because then they're mine to use. I've got her, and then I thought on the inside of that one, I kind of liked, again, I just grabbed this. I have no idea what I'm going to do with all these, but this was one of those, I forget what they call these, chip boards or something, or mini boards, or it's a Tim Holtz thing again, but they're thicker on chipboard. But I just liked that it was like a gilded gold paint thing. And then, you know, so it's like kind of like a decorating thing. So I don't really know, but I kind of liked those together. I kind of want, you know, I want to see how does it look when you turn the page and things look layered when they're staggered that way. So that'll go there. And then I was kind of playing around because I had this whole kind of sewing thing, you know, again, you're going to see beyond that. So I kind of like how this looks on top of this. So it could be kind of like a little, you know, just there, and you write underneath here. So it's kind of, again, that looking through, seeing things through things. And then my next one was this. And so I kind of wanted to do something with it so that it wasn't just, you know, so plain. And it's kind of thin paper too. So I had, this was another piece from Tim Holtz. And this is from Backdrops, Volume 1. And it was just, you know, this piece that said hardware turnery. So I knew, because this is a mercantile, it's going to have sewing things in it. It's going to have food things in it. It's going to have, you know, hardware things. You know, they kind of just had everything in one store. So I wanted the front of it to be kind of like the lady stuff, the sewing things, and then go into kind of the food things, and then kind of end with the hardware kind of stuff, the manly stuff. And then this picture with the truck and the gas pump. That just, the progression just made sense to me. So I thought, well, on this delicate-ish paper, I will put this. And it can be maybe a pocket. I haven't decided yet where this is the back of the pocket. So I might do that. And I didn't really want to waste, you know, it was this wide. So I just thought, well, that's interesting too. So I'll just fold that around. And now it makes me have kind of a tuck here too, you know, so I don't know what'll happen there, but I kind of liked the color, looked good with the green. And then for here, this is already a pocket, but it's really thin. So I thought I'll take some of my coffee stack that I had photocopied, I scanned. I showed this a few videos ago when I was kind of trying to make some materials. This is an actual Costa Rican coffee sack that I have, and I just scanned it. And so this will be in that texture kit whenever I do it, but I just took a strip of that to make my pocket sturdier. So I will use that. And then I kind of liked how this one looks in between there. So you can kind of see how the color progression goes. And then it'll break up as I add different things. So I had, this was the bottom that I cut off of this. So that will be a nice, maybe a card. I could maybe go there. This is was me playing around with this tab, which, as you can see, has changed colors more than once. But I had printed it out on just cheap paper, so I'm going to use it. So I thought, well, I'm just going to fold it up as a little writing thing. And then this back, I've shown this before. It is, you can make your own writing stamp out of corrugated cardboard. So you just corrugated cardboard, take one layer off, which is really a pain to do depending on how much glue that they put in there. But I have found that you peel off what you can, and then there'll be lots of little bits. Use like a metal ruler, something really sharp like that. This one doesn't have any cork on it. And I just kind of take that and scrape all the extra little bits off so that it's cleaned. And then Cindy had given me the idea, because mine wasn't very good, is to coats and coats of gesso so that it's priming and your ink won't just soak into your cardboard. So this is probably three or so coats of gesso. And then the black, you can see it's because I've been using it. So it doesn't come out, depending on how much ink you put on there, but I don't really care because it's for vintage grungy things. So I just, you just put your ink on and then stamp it. So that will just be another little thing that can go into a pocket somewhere, somewhere that it doesn't look redundant. Okay, so that'll be a pocket. And then the other thing I wanted to do, because this is a coffee, the coffee, the tab, that kind of thing, some ledger paper. I wanted to kind of use things that I saw in that store. So you can go online. There are lots of photos, including of Bodie, of the contents inside of the store. And one of the things, you see crates, you see barrels, you see this coffee machine is like sitting right in the middle of the room. So I thought, I'm going to take a few things. I have 2 barrels of my own. So I took a photo of my barrels, and then I, did Photoshop and got rid of the backgrounds, and then used my Adobe Illustrator. You can scale the sizes different. I actually changed the color of these a little bit, and then, stagger them, group them, whatever, made these little elements. So again, these I just do on paper, thin paper, because I'm just practicing figuring out size that I want and that kind of thing. But these, when I'm finished, will be available in the kit. And then I really like the idea of having the coffee grinder thing, because it's actually big. It's actually like, scaled to him, kind of. So I did the same thing. I took the photo with all the other junk in the room, but I just isolated that. And I'm going to make that an element too that you can cut out. So it's just kind of a way, I'm not sure where it'll go, but I'm just thinking, he kind of looks like he's leaning on something. So maybe he's leaning on that grinder. I could put his foot behind there, kind of thing. So I like things to kind of stick up above pockets and that sort of deal. So, maybe he ends up over here. I'm not sure. So I'm just kind of, making elements as I go. I've got the barrels could go here somewhere, So that's kind of what I've been working on. That'll end up in a kit eventually. I don't know what's going to go here, but, more hardware-y kind of things. I do have another little picture that's a picture of a hardware book open with a pair of glasses on it, and I don't know where. Well, I can't find it now, so you'll have to just wait till the next video when I find it. But I have it's another really cute element that I'm isolating that I think will look good in this. And then, things like the store was called Boone and Wright. It started out as Boone, and then he got into partners with J.W. Wright. And Boone, he's actually related to Daniel Boone. So I found this on Bodie's historical site, but it's really unclear. So it's actually kind of a neat ad. So I'm trying to reproduce that in a similar font and that kind of thing. You can't even read what it says. So hopefully I'll be able to reproduce that in some way and use it in my mercantile too. Anyway, so I'm, making elements as I go, and it's very slow going because I'm learning. I'm not a graphic designer, and I'm just learning the programs as I'm doing this. And so it kind of, I'm not very fast at it. So that's where I'm at. I am working on it. I didn't think you'd believe me if I didn't show you something. So I will continue to work on this, continue to work on my kit. I will try in the meantime, just because it doesn't take as long, because I have a lot of the things scanned already. I will try to get some of these other backgrounds, these textural backgrounds, into a kit too. In my Etsy shop, just so that you'll have that too. That's where I'm at on this one. I will continue working on it, try to get some more kits together for you, and have a great rest of your day. Now go make something.